Hello and welcome back to A Conversation with Carl. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe for the latest content. Today, I'm very excited to speak with Tina Moore. Tina is a 25-year veteran crime reporter and New York Post police bureau chief. She earned a BA in journalism from Temple University. She tells stories of crime victims and crime fighters alike. She previously worked at the New York Daily News, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and the Associated Press. Welcome, Tina Moore, to the conversation.
Hi, Carl. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today. So let's just start with, how has crime changed over the last 25 years after covering it?
Well, when I first arrived at in New York City to cover the NYPD, they were hovering somewhere. There were far more murders back then than there are now. I don't want to quote the exact number, but it's like twice as many as there are now. And they were trying really hard, I remember, to get down to a lower number. That was a big goal for them. So in that way, I mean, they really have come a long way. Murders are a much lower rate, a much lower number now than they were when I arrived here.
So, and are you do you enjoy covering murder? Or is it, and I don't know if that's the right way to ask the question, but is it something, because I was a producer at Court TV for years with Beth Karas, and I produced her. And I found it very interesting to cover cases and to cover trials around the country and to me, it was like an intellectual experience of how the world works or how America works in different jurisdictions.
That's exactly what I love about it, really. The drama is just there. It's built right there and it's in front of you. And you try to find out what happened and how people feel and how they're doing. And it's really interesting. And it's sad. It's sad sometimes, but it's worth covering for a lot of different reasons, I think.
And are you covering Luigi Mangione?
I didn't have a lot of a part in that, a little bit when it first happened, for sure. When they were looking for him in the beginning, remember, right after the shooting in Midtown, and they were looking for him and they found evidence where he took off and he threw his backpack or something like that. It was really interesting. And then they brought him back from Pennsylvania. I was a little bit of a part of that coverage.
Because I find those stories, and I don't mean to say it, I mean, I understand why you have to cover it, but to me, it seems like a no-brainer. Like, he did it, we know he did it, and now you're going to go sit there through a trial and you're going to find out he did it. There's no there's no question there. There's nothing That's
pretty uncommon, though. Usually, oftentimes, somebody gets shot and they're looking for the person who did it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't find them and it just sits there, and there are cases that are unsolved and they become cold cases, and that's a whole other kind of story to write. That's why it's so interesting. It's got all these different aspects to it. The Luigi case was a little exciting because there was a manhunt, but yeah, they knew who did it. So.
Yeah, once they found him. I mean, it was,
right.
And New York police can find anybody, I think. Yeah. I feel like they'll find you eventually. Like, even if you cover it all,
There's video all over. There's cameras all over the city. So it's probably one of the stupidest places to do a murder in the middle of the street like that.
Yeah. I have a friend whose father, was telling me his son was on the subway. He had witnessed a crime, witnessed the stabbing, and he was there. And police found him. Like, he just picked up and left, and they found him because they wanted a witness to see what happened and to get his story. And I found that fascinating that the police could actually find him.
It's the cameras. There's just so many cameras. After 9/11, that was one of the things, put all these cameras in around the city.
And then what do you think drives the gap between perceived safety and actual safety?
I think people feel obviously we have a huge mental health problem in the city, and we have a lot of people who are mentally ill in the subways. I take the subway at least twice a day, and I know it's true. It feels unsafe. It really does. And that's one of the main problems. And then every once in a while somebody gets punched or pushed or cut, and then that's a story too, right?
Yeah. Do you feel we're covering the subways enough, or do you think it needs to be covered more?
I think it needs to be covered a lot more. I don't want to get too into the minuscule things about it, but the minutia, but definitely, they've recently stopped handing out the subway CompStat, which is transit CompStat, which shows you a breakdown of which crimes are increasing and which crimes are decreasing. And it's an important tool, stat citywide. It was also a thing. We can see numbers for the whole city, like the top, the major crimes, felony crimes, but they stopped giving that out. Subway crime has been going down, but I can't get that report anymore. So I think we need to be covering crime. We need to know what's going on so people know what they're walking into.
And then like, since you work for the New York Post, how do you decide which story to cover? Is that something that you guys do or your editors tell you? Or do you have to make a pitch every day and be like, this would be a great story?
Both things are true. So things happen and it's like, oh my God, that's definitely a story. I was walking to work today at One Police Plaza, where we have a little den of offices for reporters from different outlets. I walked by a e-bike accident and I was talking to the cops about what happened. And I did think, is he alive? Is he dead? I mean, these things all play a role, right? It's a pretty big spot to get into to get hit by a car on an e-bike down here at Lower Manhattan in New York City. So it could be a story, but you know, it comes down to who was it and
Yeah.
is he okay? What were the circumstances? Right. So we're a tabloid. So it's not even so much the Post as the Daily News. I worked there for 10 years before I came here, and it's a tabloid. So is it interesting? Is it different? Is it just horrible? All these things get in the paper.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
when
funny.
I'm,
Sometimes funny, you know?
yeah. I mean, when I'm driving, I'm always saying I'm going to hit a bicyclist because they come out of nowhere.
I'm afraid I'm going to get hit by an e-bike every second. And I almost do, like at least once a month, I think. I almost get hit by an
Yeah,
e-bike.
no, when you're crossing the street, they just come out of nowhere and they don't stop. They don't follow the lights.
There's so many of them.
There are so many of them. Yeah.
So many of them.
And then what makes crime in New York City unique compared to like other major cities?
Yeah. I worked in Philadelphia at the Inquirer, and I didn't cover quite as much crime there, even though there is per capita. There are more murders in Philadelphia than here in New York City. Still, I'd have to check the number, but I believe that to be true still. So it's New York is it's 8.5 million people. So everything happens here. In Philly, it was a little bit more murders, inner city shootings, drugs, that kind of thing. We do have that here, obviously, but just everything happens here. It's chaos. And sometimes it's crazy to cover. There's always a story. I mean, like you talked to me about pitching. I have too many stories to pitch sometimes. And, you know, my editors stick us saying what they want, but usually I can get what I want in the paper.
When I used to work at CBS or the Weather Channel, and I would go to them with some crazy ideas. I went to them with the idea that we should have Dolly Parton on the show. And they're like, this is the Weather Channel. And I was like, yes, let her talk about weather. And Dolly Parton came on the weather on Wake Up with Al. She did. And it was a great day, but she came on to talk about, she doesn't like the winter. So she always plans her trip to go to Australia during the winter so that she could be in the hot weather. And then she gets to Australia and then she complains the entire time it's too hot. And that was really funny. And she came on and she did a whole bit. When you get behind a story, sometimes that the editors are looking at you and being like, well, and then you just marry to it and then it lands up really working.
Yeah, I try to do things that I know will get a better play. So recently, somebody offered me a story of somebody I know at DCPI, which is the press arm of the NYPD, told me about a father and son. The dad was a retired NYPD helicopter pilot, and the son was just becoming a pilot. And I was like, that's a good Father's Day story. I could pitch that. And then I was like, can I go up with them in the helicopter? And he said, yes. Oh, and I was like, great. So it made it a much better story. Just doing that, you know, just be able to say, I'm going to go up with them in the helicopter. I can take a photographer. And it was fun for me and exciting. And it was a better story. So
what type of key insights can you share from covering some of the most notorious crimes in your career?
Well, I guess, like I said before, don't shoot somebody in the middle of the street in New York City because you're not going to get away with it.
You're not getting away with it. Yes.
And the police are really good. I mean, they're great they go out after all these murders and shootings and other crimes, and they do canvases for cameras and they find them and they can actually track back to where the person came from and figure out where they live. It's really interesting how they figure these crimes out. And it's a good lesson to understand, you know, just for people to know, maybe a little bit of prevention in that knowledge, actually.
And then from your perspective as a reporter and we just talked about this too, is crime actually going down? Because if I would walk up and down the street and I talk to people, like you just said, people will tell you the subways are not safe. But if you listen to Governor Hochul, she's telling you crime's going down in New York. Where do you feel like we are with that?
Well, like I said, I know crime's going down in New York from when I started 20 years ago, because I know how many murders there were. And we always say in police reporting, you can't hide bodies. So, I mean, you can change numbers a little bit when it comes to you could make a felony assault into a misdemeanor assault, maybe if the person's injuries weren't too bad, right? You could sort of do different things to turn a theft, a minor theft, or a major theft into a smaller theft. So you can sort of play with the numbers that way. So the major crimes going down, but you can't hide bodies. And I know that there are more murders 20 years ago than there are today. I mean, I feel like crime has gone down, but I think people would argue right now that it's going up a little bit because there are people out there who just are having big problems and they end up committing crime. And I'm not saying that's the only reason people commit crimes, but that's part of it, that you got people walking around hitting people and that kind of thing. And shootings too, the same thing.
How much crime goes unreported in your estimation?
I think it's a lot of crime goes unreported. I think people, it takes a lot to report. I was punched outside of 1PP, not far away. I was walking to work one day I think it was 2 years ago now. My husband, so I called my husband because he was working in the area, and he came out and he said, you got to report it, because you always say if you don't report it, it could happen with somebody else. The same person could hurt someone else. I was like, oh my God, it's such a pain. And it hurt. And I wanted to report it because it wasn't right. And it was painful. So I reported it, but it did take quite a bit I had to go back, and then I had to do a report, and then I had to do like a paper lineup. And then it was a bit of work to do it. And I think some people are just like, all right, I'm not, unless you're really wounded, that maybe you don't have to report it, so you don't.
I was at Columbus Circle and somebody this woman hit her in the head, and she said, she was like, I'm fine. And I was standing right next to her. So it could have hit me. It could have hit any of us. And I said, you have to call the police and report it. She said, no, I'm not calling it. And I didn't know why. And I didn't understand, I didn't get involved in it. But then I called 311 and I just said to them, I just want to let you know what I saw happen. Just so it's written down somewhere, because to me, I kind of feel you're doing it more to help him as well as to help the victim. Critics argue that crime coverage is sensationalized compared to hard news like politics. Why should audiences still care about crime reporting?
I think crime reporting is interesting because we can tell you exactly what's happening. We can show you exactly what's going on. I mean, sensationalized, we're tabloids. We're at a tabloid, right? So yeah, headlines, sure. I mean, what's our famous headline of the Post? Headless body found at topless bar. I mean, That's what we do, right? But then you go in and you read the story, or you're online and you read the story, and it's our stories are straightforward stories.
But isn't everything clickbait? Even in the New York Times, I would argue everything's clickbait. Even if they had New York Times headline, they want me to click on it.
I guess, but I just had some headline training yesterday, because now that reporters are doing our own layout online. We're writing our own headlines more than we ever did before, for sure. And so the training was like, don't ever say this. There's certain, they don't want people just to click. There's got to be something behind it, something worthwhile to see. So, I mean, they are saying don't be too clickbaity, because it's embarrassing. When I first came to New York, I used to love, and even later, up until probably 8 years ago, I think, I used to love being on the train and seeing somebody going through the paper they're reading, and there's my story and they're reading it. I thought, that's so cool. I don't know where those people are now.
Yeah.
There's so many different things to look at on your phone. So
you don't see them.
I don't see it at all, no.
And then how do you approach crime victims? And how do you get them to talk to you? Because this is one of the things that I found when I would cover trials. Going up to victims sometimes was incredibly hard. And I'm just curious how.
I had to say, I'm really sorry for what happened to you. I'm sorry to bother you. If you don't want to talk to me, I understand. I just wanted to see if you want to say anything about the person, or they and then if they start talking, well, what do you think of what happened? What do you think of the person who did this? What do you want to see happen to them? And that's sort of a tabloid script for talking to a person, I think. Always, every reporter I know, I see the way reporters are portrayed in the movies sometimes, but every reporter I see do this job does it in the same way, approaching people with a lot of compassion and empathy, because you feel like it's horrible what happened to them. Not, really, it's terrible. And you want to just tell them that. And then if you want to talk to me, if you want to say anything about them, the person who was hurt or died, or, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, to me, I think empathy is the way to go. And you're sitting there with them and they've had this horrible thing happen and they don't know what to make, and everyone's talking to them at once. Everyone's
Yeah.
showing up at their house at once, and they have to make heads or tails of it when they're also dealing with incredible emotion and sadness.
I also feel, though, equally as through from what I've seen in my life, is that sometimes when a person is going through something like that, everybody around them is tiptoeing around it and not letting them talk up, or not wanting to make them talk about it because they're afraid to make them talk about it.
Yeah.
So sometimes people really come out and say, God, he was the greatest person in the world. This is horrible. This person should go to the jail, shouldn't even get to go to jail, that kind of thing. So that's sort of the interviews I've experienced.
Do you get nervous before?
I'm always nervous. Yeah. Because I feel like I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess it up.
And then how's the competition?
Yeah, I think back when I was out on the street, and I'm not anymore on the street. When I'm doing this, I'm usually calling somebody on the phone, because I'm more in the office writing stuff now than I am out on the street, writing and reporting things now. But when I was out on the street, yeah, it was competition, and you try to get there first, talk to the person first. But there's also, even between the tabloids, if you're two tabloid reporters out in the street trying to go to talk to somebody, you'll go together. It's just, nobody wants to upset the person you're trying to talk to. So it's just easier just to have everybody there at the same time, instead of going repeated times into their door. So when we're talking about immediately after the crime happens, that kind of interview, then I think most often the reporters who are there will get together and say, let's just see if they want to come out and talk.
Yeah. And since you cover crime, what's the best piece of advice you would give to a crime victim and their family?
Stick with it. Yes. Make sure you get through the process. Report it. Report it to the police, talk to the cops. And like you said, I mean, in some regard, I've talked to people who've gone through prison who say that where they got help for the problems they were having, was a drug problem, which is a big problem oftentimes with people who commit crimes. And they got help with the drugs and alcohol because they got rehab, and I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying sometimes I think that it can help the person who committed the crime as well. And so some people these days, I think, are afraid, nobody wants to be a Karen, right? So they're afraid to even report a crime. But I think that it's important to other people won't be victims.
What steps can people take to lower their risk of becoming a crime victim?
Stay away from the edge of the subway. I see people walking down really close to the edge of the subway all the time. I really try hard not to do that and to stay back. Because that's one thing I see happening still a lot more than I'd like to see happening, is people getting pushed onto the subway tracks. And that's something I try to avoid. And then I'd say, and even outside everywhere else, to stay aware who's around you. And but, again, 8.5 million people in the city. It's not like everyone's going to be a victim of a crime. It does happen. So you just have to be aware of what's around you. Some people get overly scared of the city. And it's funny to me because I walk around all over the place. I'm not scared. I'm just
I'm not scared of the city either. I love the city, and I feel like you can walk around New York all day long. But I always say you have different experiences. If you're in a subway car where everyone's okay and everyone's fine and everyone's on their phone, they're not talking to you, and you go to the next subway and there's somebody that's mentally ill, you're having a different subway ride.
Yeah. So, and that's the perception part of it, right? People feel like they're going to be victims because of that kind of thing, but that doesn't mean they're going to be a victim necessarily. There's a lot of people in the subway.
And what role does journalism play in holding the justice system accountable?
It's interesting. I mean, certainly when a person's a victim of a crime and the criminal who committed the crime gets let go immediately, and that's upsetting to the crime victim. I've interviewed people in those situations. And so we name the judge usually, and that gets me in some trouble sometimes, I know, but I feel like people need to be questioned about the decisions they're making in these cases sometimes. And there's nothing wrong with that. So,
well, that's the role, right? That's what you guys are there to do.
With the state,
yeah. You have to keep everyone accountable, and you can't be held accountable for someone else's mistakes.
So I mean, ultimately, it's the criminal's fault that they committed the crime, but then should they be let out immediately? We've kind of put these laws in place. I don't know. It's a lot going on.
And how, through all of this, I mean, we just talked about you getting punched, but how do you maintain your own mental health?
I work out a lot. I run, and I used to run a lot more, but now I do other stuff. And I try to take care of myself like that, and eat healthy and drink a lot of water. I mean, these are basic stuff, but it's just, I try to stay healthy, and I try to think about what I'm doing and not get in situations where I feel like I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing all the time.
Are you a reporter all the time? If you're
Yeah.
sitting on a Saturday night, you're somewhere out there and you're hearing a story, you're like, oh, this is a New York Post
Yeah.
story right
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
now.
for sure. I am. I was on vacation last week just for like 4 days or 5 days. And, there was a big story, sad story about a couple of people who were stabbed by a guy on the Upper West Side. And I got some information about it. So I sent it in. And then there was a shooting on Saturday night after I was done for the day of a poor kid. This 12-year-old kid was shot and killed in the Bronx. And I wrote that like after I had left work, when I got home and sent it in an email. And then the next day I was able to get them some information on who he was and a little bit more information, and I sent it in. So I am always,
working. As we start to wrap up here, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you about crime reporting?
I would just say it's interesting that a lot of people don't realize that we have a little den of offices here at One Police Plaza where the Daily News, the Post, Newsday, TV stations, Pix, and like there's a bunch of us in here. The Times, a Gothamist, and it's interesting that we have this sort of like little community of people doing the same thing down here, and trying to hold. There's a part, like you said, holding people accountable, the police department, judges, but also trying to. We have another side we have to do where we have to do some good stories too, some like police hero stories, and that's another big tabloid thing, is to do those stories. So try to walk a line between, those two things. It's interesting.
How's the competition between everyone down there? Because I used to love when I was out on the road covering stories, I would love being with all the other networks. I found that thrilling, and I found that here's my challenge. And I'm out there every day trying to beat everybody else.
It's interesting. So if I'm working on something that's kind of secret, I come into this office. We each have like an office like this. We close the door and everybody else is out there, and I can work back here on whatever I'm doing. But sometimes we're all out there and something big happens and we all go upstairs to get information on it, at the same time, because it's just self-preservation. We all go up at the same time to get the same information. And then later, some of us will probably like go to the side and try to get some other information ourselves. So yeah, it's competitive still.
Yeah. When I was covering cases, if the New York Post or the Daily News covered a story, because you guys would always give names for us to find the other person. Tina Moore, thank you so much for joining me. She is the New York Post Police Bureau Chief. Thank you out there for listening. As always, let me know what you think. Put your thoughts in the comment section. And until next time, everyone, be safe.